Welcome again. This is Denise Rolark-Barnes, publisher of the Washington Informer, and welcome to Washington Informer News, what we call WIN TV. We're so glad to have you this afternoon. We've got a great show headed right ahead for you. And so we want to know that, this is where we bring news that matters. We bring you the news that matters, WIN TV. So we, like I said, have a very exciting show. We're going to have actually three of our Washington Informer reporters who are going to discuss with us this week's historic 2020 virtual Democratic National Convention. Did the Democrats do enough to win back the White House in November? Well, senior writer Stacy Brown, contributing writer Hamil Harris, and staff writer James Wright will give their assessment and preview what's in store for the Republicans next week. We're also going to have Stacy Burnette, Senior Director of Comcast Government Regulatory Affairs, Comcast Government and Regulatory Affairs Office on Internet Essentials. And she's going to bring some valuable information that you may need to ensure that your family is equipped for remote learning. And our special editions editor, Dr. Shantella Sherman, will talk to us about the back-to-school issue that ran this week in the Washington Informer. So you know that COVID-19 is affecting everybody, especially students, and it's been a real game changer for many of them. And we'll be joined by three college students who will give us a look into their lives and how they've been impacted by COVID-19. Blaire Hardison, Devynne Johnson, and Jordan Colquitt will spend a little time with us as they have all summer. This is pretty much their last week here at the Informer. And we're going to learn what going back to school is like for them, what virtual learning will be like, and basically how this COVID-19 has impacted their life. So, I always like to start the week off with the latest copy of the Washington Informer. And we've hit the streets again, and I'm hoping that if you have not picked up a copy of the Washington Informer at your nearest newsstand, that you have at least logged on to WashingtonInformer.com and gotten a digital copy, where we've got great news in here, including, as I said, our back-to-school issue. We were also, I think Sam Collins, our staff writer also, a contributing writer, did a great story on how evictions are going to impact local residents. It's a very extensive story, and we're going to be following that because we know so many Washingtonians are going to be impacted by what happens when the moratorium is lifted on evictions in the DC area. I want to, as I always just like to say to you, we certainly do love it when you decide to subscribe to our e-newsletter. And we want you to continue to do that. Those numbers make a difference. The Informer survives off of advertising. And, those advertisers always want to know what your analytics are, what the numbers are like. Are people actually watching your show? Are they reading the newspaper? And we can say yes, we can find those numbers, but we certainly love knowing that you have actually subscribed. Plus, we have a lot of great offers that you will get when you do subscribe. So make sure you continue to do that. Quick note, like I said, it's back to school time, and I mentioned earlier that Dr. Sherman did a great supplement, a special issue on our kids and what's happening with them as they go back to school. And we'll have her on in just a little bit. But a quick note, we always talk about those hot topics. And so you all know that we got news this week that we may have a new baby on the way, and that's a baby panda. Yeah, we're talking about Mei Jing, who is at the National Zoo here in Washington, D.C. We hear that Mei Jing may be pregnant. And we are just honored that Washington, D.C. is one of the only places in the country where pandas are successfully bred in captivity. And, the rule is once the pandas get to a certain age, they are sent back to China, and where they're more in, able to survive among their colleagues, panda buddies in China. We also heard that Councilmember McDuffie from Ward 5, Council member McDuffie is the co-author of the Don't Mute DC bill, and he announced details this week of a plan for $3 million in the city that will go towards the cultivation of our native music, go-go. So we appreciate Mr. McDuffie for recognizing that, you know, what makes a city is its music, its trees, its people, all of that. So we're glad that that has happened. And of course, in Montgomery County, there are more COVID sites that have been designated. They're going to resume their COVID testing, and that's really important. You know, I know a lot of people, they say the numbers are down as it relates to COVID testing. And we need to make sure that we continue to do that because we've got to do something to end this virus. And the best ways, as we said once, of course, are wearing your mask, which you have to continue to do, washing your hands or wearing gloves, and maintaining social distancing. So those are important, but there are COVID testing sites all over the region, but Montgomery County has opened its sites, as well as Maryland, which I think is facing some, Prince George's County and other places that are, and Washington, D.C., that are opening more testing sites. We talked about evictions, and we talked about Sam's story here in the District of Columbia. We know that residents or tenants are facing evictions or the possibility of being evicted, not only in the district, but also in Maryland and Virginia. So if you are one of those, we would certainly love to hear from you to find out what your strategy might be for staying in your place, or if you have discovered some resources that are helping you and your community to maintain your homes, or if you just need to vent and you want to share your story, please contact us at wintv@washingtoninformer.com. Again, contact us at wintv@washingtoninformer.com. And last but not least, Maryland has added almost 200 ballot drop boxes for the November election. Regardless of what nationally may be happening, we have to find out, and we will begin to share this information with you on how you can cast your ballot in the November election. You've got to vote, and we want to make sure that you are equipped with not only how to vote, but where to vote. So continue to watch us here at WIN TV and read the Washington Informer. And last but not least, we want you to participate in our WIN Daily Poll. Tell us if you believe the police-involved murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery will receive real jail time. Let us know your thoughts and sign up to the WIN Daily at WashingtonInformer.com so that we can get your comments. Okay, so let's get on with it. We are going to talk now with Stacy Brown, Hamil Harris, and James Wright, who did a great job this week covering the remote Democratic convention, virtual Democratic convention mostly. And by the way, this is the first that we've witnessed anywhere, any time in the history of this country. So, Hamil, let me start with you. What stood out the most to you about this virtual convention?
Well, as one who's been blessed to cover many conventions over 20 years, I guess what stood out to me is the fact that it was not the real thing in terms of the floor, of the hats, and all the crazy things that go on within the floor. But what also on the good side, we got to see Kamala Harris, we got to learn more about her, and also, I guess, Joe Biden. He is still evolving. He's still getting his message together. So overall, I give it a B. I would like it to be more cohesive in terms of just the rawness of the convention, but they got the job done. They did have a unified message, and they're now ready to go out.
Stacy, you've covered many conventions, and you covered from a national standpoint. What stood out for you this week? Who were the highlights of the convention, and did you see anything that really think may not have been effective or a good play for the Democrats?
Well, what stood out for me is the obviously the speech by Kamala Harris accepting the nomination. That was historic. We've been chronicling the Black women's suffrage movement over the past year, and certainly Kamala Harris's nomination helps to culminate the story itself. But of course, Barack Obama really he was the main part of my story today, and that's because of the fact that for several reasons. One, he never in the 4 years have attacked Trump directly. This time he took the gloves off, and he really, I think he really articulated what most Americans, not just Black Americans, but most Americans are feeling and have felt in these 4 years under Donald Trump. And in fact, Obama never referred to him as President Trump. If you took notice, he said Donald Trump at least a couple times. And to the viewers, I'm sorry for the echo. I hear it myself.
Yeah.
But I thought the convention was well done. Camille gave it a B. I think that based on the fact that the circumstances, I would tend to go A because I think that they really did give their message across. I think Joe Biden finally impressed in a way that his camp was really looking for, and in a way that people really felt like they can embrace and get behind.
Wonderful. James, want to bring you on because, you looked at the local angle of this. This was the first time that delegates, and we voted for delegates to attend and represent the District of Columbia at the National Convention. They weren't unable to attend. So what was their agenda, and had they gone, what would they have done that they, or did they do, in spite of the fact that they didn't go?
What they did was very unique, and other delegations throughout the country did the same thing. They held virtual watch parties. They had speakers virtually, and they talked about basically the Democratic Party and the party's values. You had speakers such as in these virtual watch parties, former Senator Bill Nelson. You had former Senator Carol Mosley Braun, and you even had Sheila Jackson Lee, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, come by on Tuesday virtually to the DC Democrats to talk about what they're doing in Congress and what Congress needs to do in terms of what the Democratic agenda. And as you know, on Thursday, yesterday, while Biden was giving his speech, they had a party, a drive-in theater party at RFK. So the DC Democrats were very active, but one thing is very clear. When the DC Democrats go to these conventions lately, they talk about statehood, and they're very, very strong in emphasizing statehood.
So was that on their agenda this year? Was there any addition, is they put on the party platform, do you know?
Yes, yes. As a matter of fact, as Charles Wilson pointed out, and he showed me that Charles Wilson is the chair of the DC Democratic State Committee, that the plank supporting DC statehood was on page 51. So basically, they accomplished what they wanted to in terms of the Democratic Party platform.
Wonderful. So go ahead, Hamil. Yes.
I agree with James. One thing that Ms. Norton, who's a master politician, she was able to, again, when they had the famous roll call of the states, which puts the district on the same par as Texas and everywhere else, you had the mayor to put the 43 votes cast, one for Bernie and the 43 for Biden, but they had the mayor, Ms. Norton, and Council Chair Mickelson standing on the roof of some building on Black Lives Matter Plaza. So again, that was a plus too for the district to be considered as the states as they did this roll call.
So do you all have any updates on what you think we can expect next week from President Trump and the Republicans?
Yeah, absolutely. we know, too, if you recall, that famous scene last month with those two.
Denise,
Um,
I'm a historian. I'm a frustrated presidential historian, and I really don't like the fact that he's going to deliver his acceptance speech from the White House. That's just not something that you do. He could go to Charlotte to do that, but not at the White House. And then after that, they're going to have some sort of fireworks display over the mall. I just don't like that at all. And that's just unprecedented, and I just don't like that.
I got you, but Stacy, go ahead. You got cut off.
James is very passionate.
Yes.
Um, well, one of the things that we will see, if you recall, last month, the troops attacked in St. Louis that was pointing the guns at the protesters. Well, they're going to be invited to speak at the convention for the Republicans next week. And it shows you the difference, right? And it shows you also, it should show you where the president is going with his campaign. And he talks a lot about the white suburban housewife and her being threatened by thugs from rural areas, right? So we know what that is. I mean, it's become more than just a dog whistle now. And the president understands now. I mean, we get these press releases all the time from blacks who support Trump, from that voice. However, the president understands that it was those who heard that dog whistle in 2016 that got him in, and those who are listening he's just being very direct now. He's looking for white supremacists to vote him in.
So let me ask this question, and then we're going to have to go. But it's interesting how when people talk about last year's election and the last presidential election 4 years ago, and then what we have to look forward to this time. I mean, it seems as though folks keep forgetting that the popular vote went to Hillary Clinton and the electoral votes went to Donald Trump. What will happen? I mean, even if the majority, if there's an outpouring of voter participation as we expect, what do the numbers look like, if any of you all know, as it relates to the electoral votes, which is what I'm sure Trump is banking on?
One of the things is why certain states in this battleground have been expanded, like Wisconsin. Again, you look for these large suburban communities. I think it was Florida. The margin of win and loss was only 10,000 votes. And so again, this is a major battle for white women and the swing states. I think it's not like 13. But I've noticed that with the Democrats, they have a large kind of, I won't say underground, but campaign where they are mobilizing voters in those particular swing states. And again, the battleground has been expanded. So at the end of the day, it's about mobilizing that so-called middle ground. And again, Trump barely won, but he won a lot of places. And that's really, to me, the battleground, flipping those states.
Well, I want to thank you all for this assessment of this week, which was a real, I think what we've heard is more Americans were able to participate in what otherwise is pretty much an invitation type style party, even though there are thousands of people there. But now there were hundreds of thousands who were able to tune in and to really get the message of what the party is planning and what the president plans. And so we want to give that same kind of attention to what the RNC has next week. And if we can, we might have to steal a couple of moments from Win TV's last end of the week or end of the month program, just to have a couple thoughts about the RNC. So I want to thank you all for being with us. And thank you for what you do for not only the Washington Informer, but for our readers and the community at large. All right. So, these are some of the hardest working journalists that I know of in the DC area, and I'm so glad they're part of the Washington Informer team. When we come back, we're going to talk with Stacy Burnette, again, of Comcast Internet Essentials, but we're going to take a quick break for the census.
Complete the 2020 U.S. Census. It is safe and secure. It benefits your city, your community, and your family. Complete it online, over the phone, or once you receive it in the mail. You matter. Get counted. 2020 Census.gov.
Hey, Stacy.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Well, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our viewers. Stacy Burnette is the Director of Government and Regulatory Affairs at Comcast in the Beltway region, and her role there is she's basically responsible for maintaining positive relationships with government officials, legislative monitoring, advocacy, and managing community investment budget. Blah, blah, blah. That's a lot, Stacy, and I'm so glad that you're here to talk to us about some education issues. But I just always want to kind of set the tone, because even though I gave your professional background, I want to know, who is Stacy Burnette? I mean, you're from Los Angeles, you've been in DC, you work for the district government. Tell us who Stacy Burnette is.
Well, I'll start by saying I'm a double alum of Howard University, where I received a bachelor's degree in accounting and a professional degree in law. And I practiced law for about 10 years before I became a cable regulator and then moved over to Comcast. And I'm having a wonderful time working with DC government officials and community members to spread more information about Comcast Internet Essentials program.
On a career note, we both are alums of Howard Law School. And, I went there with the expectation of pursuing a career in communications law. I have to admit, it was a few years before you got there. And folks didn't know what I was talking about. They were like, I don't understand how we're going to make this connection between an internet that didn't exist at the time, right? Cell phones that we weren't using at the time. And so how did you kind of position yourself or get into this career path of communications law, which is what I'm defining it? I'm not sure. And yours is public policy too. But how did you get there?
So I started off as a trial lawyer for the DC government in the Office of the Attorney General, that's what it's called now. And I met a lady who was the executive director of the DC Office of Cable Television, Deborah Royster, and she needed a lawyer in her office. And so I had a great trial record, and she was willing to have me as her lawyer there. And I had to learn everything about cable at the time, but that's how I got into it. But you're right, no one could envision, at least we couldn't, that we have this amazing internet tool, that we would have cell phones that, everybody wants a cell phone. It's just incredible. But I commend you for having vision, knowing that communications was this broad field and how useful your law degree would be in this field.
Well, here at the Informer, it puts me in touch with the experts like you. So it's a win-win situation. And this week we did an editorial actually on, it's just my kind of personal philosophy that now that we're doing this remote learning, and thanks to Comcast Internet Essentials, it seems as though this is an opportunity to sort of level the playing field for a lot of students, because if they have the tools, right? They have supportive parents, teachers who've learned how to use those tools, and then of course the internet itself, which supplements everything that they would not have learned in a classroom. It makes it, to me, it levels the playing field. What do you feel about that?
So I think you're right. The internet is the world's largest library. And when you have internet service, you have immediate access to volumes and volumes of information about everything imaginable. And so the beauty of Comcast Internet Essentials program is it allows low-income families to connect to high-speed internet service for $9.95 a month. And in fact, our Internet Essentials program was designed to address the three major barriers to internet adoption, which are cost, digital literacy, and equipment. And so Internet Essentials addresses cost by only charging $9.95 a month. We address digital literacy by providing free digital literacy training to all program participants and their families. And some of our training partners you're aware of, the DC Public Library, who has locations all across DC, Bite Back, and several other entities help us provide training for people who need to understand how to work the computer and navigate the internet. And then the last component, equipment. As part of Internet Essentials, all families they have the option of purchasing a low-cost computer. And just one more thing, I just want to share this one other thing with you.
Please.
Just recently, last week, we introduced a program, or we announced a program called the Internet Essentials Partnership Program. And it relies on public-private partnerships and enables communities to collaborate to fund high-speed internet service for low-income families. And as a result of this program, we started it right when COVID began, shortly after March. And since that time, we've connected and collaborated with 70 schools across the United States. And through this Internet Essentials Partnership Program, we are, in collaboration with these schools, providing internet service to 200,000 students so that they're prepared and able to fully engage in distance learning.
Wonderful. That's good news. That's powerful because, we know that there's a divide, a digital divide. It's existed for a long time, and it sounds as though this is Comcast's way of addressing that divide. But I'm wondering, what is the biggest challenge that you all are facing when it comes to providing the service in communities like where I am, for example, in Ward 8?
Right. So it's a couple of challenges, Denise. Number one, just awareness about the program. And that's why we are excited to partner with you and thousands of other community-based organizations to make people aware of the program. You can't participate in something if you don't even know about it. So awareness is always something that we are engaged in, and we partner with schools, nonprofits, libraries, all these entities so that they can share information about this program. And then some of the other barriers are just relevance. People are not aware of how important the internet could be to their family. It's transformational. People start businesses right in the comfort of their home and become millionaires. And so just knowing how relevant it is to have internet service. And that plays into the adoption issue. Why some folks don't adopt it, it's not as if they don't understand it, they just don't know how it would benefit them and their families. So those are some of the challenges.
So you said you're working with DC Public Library. Of course, many of the libraries are really closed right now, but how can people access either we're running the phone number below, so we want to make sure folks understand that this is a number they can call to get more information about Internet Essentials.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's
Wonderful.
correct.
Wonderful. And what happens, if I make that phone call after listening to this show, what happens next?
So if you call that number right now, you would be connected to a person. You say, I'm interested in Internet Essentials. I just heard about it. And they would walk you through an application. So they take information from you over the phone. And if you qualify, we get you connected to the internet. Now, let me share with you the qualifications for Internet Essentials, because it is strictly for low-income families. And so the first qualification is you have to either qualify or receive some type of public assistance. And so examples of public assistance are Medicaid, veterans assistance, housing assistance, temporary assistance for needy families, supplemental nutrition assistance program here in DC. So, and also if you have a child, at least one child that receives or is eligible to receive free or reduced lunch through the National School Lunch Program. So those are the examples of assistance that you need to either receive or be eligible for. And then the second qualification is you have to live in an area where we provide our products and services. Third, you cannot have received Comcast internet service in the last 90 days. You cannot have been a recent subscriber of our internet service. And then lastly, we have some debt requirements that we are completely waiving from now until the end of the year. So if you owe any debt, it's okay. So that we can get more people signed up to the program. And I just forgot to tell you one important thing, Denise.
That's okay.
As part of Comcast COVID-19 response, we offered proactively 60 days of free high-speed internet service to new Internet Essentials customers. I already explained we waived the debt requirement, and then we also opened up our Wi-Fi hotspots, thousands of them in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. We opened up these Wi-Fi hotspots to anybody, and they are in our outdoor and small business locations. And all of this is available until the end of the year. So those are just some examples of what we're doing to assist people in getting connected to the internet.
Well, that last part was a question I was going to ask because, the schools were sort of, having a difficult time deciding whether they were going to go back into the school buildings or whether it would be remote learning. And right now, I think the conversation just means kids and teachers will be home, at least in the district, until at least until the end of the year. So this certainly does support their study, and I think I'm like James now. That's a great thing. I like that. I think that's wonderful. Because I do worry. I've talked to folks, and I had someone say to me the other day, I don't understand why folks don't have cable and why they don't have internet when they've got those game things, which are expensive, in their homes. But you addressed that too. You said sometimes people don't understand what difference it will make in their lives, not only for parents who are trying to find jobs, people that can't get out. I mean, there's a lot there that having this access will help or benefit families. And I appreciate what Comcast is doing.
Oh, thank you. It's a way to stay in touch with family members. There are just so many amazing uses for the internet. And so I encourage everyone who is listening and viewing this program to reach out to Comcast, either go on our website, internetessentials.com, internetessentials.com, or they can dial that number that has been showing on the screen, which is 1-855-846-8376.
Well, full disclosure, we're a customer. And you're right. If it were not for our relationship, we wouldn't be doing this show right now. So thank you so very much for making sure that we have good internet, right, in our community so that we can do what folks do in other parts of the city and the world. We appreciate you, Stacy Burnette.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate the partnership that we've shared for years.
Yes, yes. All righty. Well, have a great day. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
All righty. Don't forget that. And if you don't need Internet Essentials and you know somebody in your community, you've got a family member, kids, whatever, make that phone call. Everybody can have access to the internet, and we need it right now. We really do, for just future learning and access. So I want to thank again Stacy Burnette for being with us. And so now we're going to welcome to our show Dr. Shantella Sherman and Jordan Colquitt. Dr. Sherman, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. We don't see Jordan. Oh, there he
There
is.
he
Hi,
is.
Jordan.
Jordan.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your contributions to the Washington Informer. And Dr. Sherman, you did a health supplement last week, but we're going to talk about back to school and the stories that you covered in this issue. You want to share some of those topics with us?
I'm sure. I always say that back to school is a very important time, and there's always something that parents need to know, students need to know, teachers need to be aware of. And then just the broader community needs to understand. So under COVID-19, there are a lot of additional issues that include, how do you get kids up and get them on a routine when they're already in the house? How do you set your house up so that it's conducive to good learning, as if just the students were in school? For those students who are actually having to go to school, what's the protocol? What are safety measures that parents need to be aware of? What are the teachers concerned about? And then for college students, will they be returning to campus if they have a choice? What are things that they need to be aware of? And we're actually allowing the college students to tell us the things that they are concerned with, so that we're more aware of what their needs may be from us as community members or as journalists.
Well, Jordan, I didn't appropriately introduce you, and I want to go back and do that because you're a first-year political science scholar at Towson University, and you graduated from Parkdale High School in Riverdale, Maryland, where you served as both the Parkdale Senior Class President of 2020 and the Black Student Union founding president. And you previously served as the Prince George's County Regional Association of Student Government's Chief of Staff. And now we can add to your resume a contributing writer to the Washington Informer. Boy, you're busy. You are busy. But tell me how this COVID-19 has affected your activities. You've been so active. What's different for you?
Yeah, certainly. So initially the question was, at the end of the school year, how can we keep students engaged? As seniors, we had a lot of activities planned, and we just wanted to keep the class engaged and informed. So that was our task then. But now our main concern is just how we can stay safe on campus, or whether or not returning to campus is the right thing to do. I'm actually here right now at my dorm at Towson University, so it's interesting. And it's just important to stay safe, wear your mask, stay 6 feet apart. But I think the most important thing is to do as much as we can safely.
So when Chantel, I think you've also talked about, just that whole mental health aspect. That's what you did in the health supplement. And I'd like for both of you all to really talk about, for you, Jordan, going back to school, making that decision to go back on campus, to stay in the dorm. Of course, who doesn't want to do that? So, it could be a pandemic. I'm going to school, so I got that. But I'm sure that there were some things that you had to deal with, and Chantel, just kind of mixing in that health supplement you did last week and back to school. Can you talk a little bit about, what families and students are going through?
I can say right off the bat, a lot of the students left during spring break, and in some instances, they were told they would have their belongings boxed up and sent to them, not to return to campus, just because COVID hit right as spring break was starting. So some students were still trying to get over whether or not they had their belongings. The anxiety of having to leave campus and not return for those who weren't actually going to leave for spring break, and then determining whether or not to meet their families. When we're talking about, this is a pandemic that's hitting all age groups. So there was some concern that I heard from students that said, if I left home and went back to the campus, and then they closed the campus down, which has happened in many instances now across the country, and then I return home, would I be putting my family members at risk because I've now picked up the virus or some form of something and taken it back home? So there's a lot of anxiety, in addition to the fact that there's anxiety just from leaving home as college students. So the number of students that are dealing with being away from home for the first time, being in shared spaces. Most dorms now have 2 to 3 people in a room. So Jordan, I'm not sure what your situation is, but just that whole situation where instead of you being in a private room, you have a communal space that you're in, as well as communal bathrooms and communal eating spaces. So how does that work, even if you are doing distance learning from your dorm rooms, and you're not in a classroom itself? How do you manage and kind of navigate a pandemic while you're trying to enjoy the college life? So all of those things kind of factor in, and there are no easy and quick answers. We're kind of figuring it out. Universities are as they go.
Right, and I want to ask Jordan, how are you dealing with that?
It was definitely a tough decision to make to return to campus this semester. But ultimately, I just wanted the experience, and the best opportunity. You have to also recognize everyone doesn't work well with distance learning, virtual learning. And I'm one of those people. If I'm sitting behind a computer screen all day, expecting to learn, it's just not going to work out. So, in the dorm room, where it's just me, and I'm here with my professor, my class on the Zoom, I can manage that. Another thing that we should consider is that when colleges make the decision to close campus, right, or when it's time to go home, many students do have homes to go to, but there are some students who have nowhere to go. And so they're kind of like in a tricky situation because they ultimately don't really have the choice of, returning to campus and having those safety issues, or, stay home. But what happens if, they don't really have anywhere else to go? And I think it's just important for colleges to make sure that they're doing the best. And it's really on the students as well to make sure that we're making smart decisions that are not only impacting ourselves, but the entire campus community as well.
So you said you don't have a roommate.
Oh, I do.
You do have a roommate. Okay. All right.
Fortunately, it's someone that I know, and we have a private bathroom, so it's not communal. But I do.
And Dr. Sherman mentioned meals and other, some of the stories I've heard are where the real problems are Greek life organizations, because they are so social and they're not obeying or observing, the social distancing rules. So, I mean, what is your social life like? Or have you just decided you're going to go to college and learn and have no social life? Does that work?
Well, I'm definitely here to learn. I will have a social life, but like I said, it's just on the students to make smart decisions. So having a social life, but I also still have the power to determine where I want to go and when I want to go. So if I see, it's something that maybe I shouldn't go there, of course I'm going to make that decision. But I feel like the social experience, it will be different, as many things are, but it'll be there.
Well, I'm really glad to meet you, and I appreciate your support for what we do and your writing. And it seems like to me a social life for you would be a political rally or a political meeting anyway, because you're so active. And Dr. Sherman, I want to thank you so much for putting that issue together, and you do great work with these special editions. And I invite everybody to pick up a copy of the Washington Informer or go to WashingtonInformer.com and read this month's back to school issue. And you'll see Dr. Sherman and Jordan Colquitt both there providing news you can use. Thank you all for joining us. So we're now going to move on to our other college students, our interns, our summer youth employment worker. This it's a good moment, but kind of sad, because this is their last week that we're spending with them. Actually, Devynne's last week was last week, but she's been back with us, and Blaire's about to go back off to school. So it's great to introduce you ladies, Blaire Hardison and Devynne. I want to thank you so much for being with us. And so I'm going to start actually with you, Blaire. You tell us a little bit. I mean, where do you go to school and where you're from and all that?
Yeah, I'm from here. I went to high school here, just a small school on Connecticut Avenue, and I go to University of Massachusetts Amherst. I'm studying communication and a minor in art history. So I'm hoping to, say this sort of thing.
And Devynne, how about yourself?
I'm a mass communication student at Delaware State University. I'm a local Washingtonian, born and raised here. I went to KIPP DC College Prep. Yeah.
And so both of you, I know Blaire, you work with your radio station. Actually, you are the manager of your station?
Yeah, it's the TV station on campus, and I've had a few different titles there. I started as producer for the sports show, for like the UMass specific sports show, and now I'm just like the station manager. Yeah.
I want to ask both of you all. I mean, you've made a decision to go back to school, right? To return to school this semester. Tell me what that process was like. And Devynne, I'll start with you because you just made that decision yesterday.
Yeah.
So tell us how you got there and the conversation you may have had with your parents and what you anticipate when you go back.
Right. So it was a very interesting process to get through because I had to make the decision so quickly. I think that based upon Delaware State's guidelines from what the CDC has told them to do, I feel comfortable going back to campus because I know I'll be safe. And then I also know that it'll help with the household, and I know that it will also help with me staying focused while I'm at school. So it has a couple good factors going in. The only thing that I'm worried about is just my own safety. So I'll take care of myself and do what I need to do and wear my mask and wash my hands very often while I'm on campus so I can stay as safe as possible. Yeah.
And Blaire, how about you?
I was pretty fortunate to have an off-campus place, so I don't have to really worry about interacting with too many people on campus. And all of my classes, luckily, are remote. I don't have to show up at all. So that's going to be good. It was hard for me to decide whether I wanted to stay in DC or go back, but it's my last year, so I figured I would go back. And the decision, I did go back and forth a lot, but I'm going to end up going just because I have a house off campus and it's my last year and we're all going to be me and my roommates, we're all going to be very careful, staying safe away from each other.
I just want to take a step back for a minute to when this COVID hit and you all were essentially, I guess you were either home for spring break or you were sent home without knowledge or understanding of whether you would be going back. What both of you all share that experience with us and what was going on in your head at the time?
Yeah, it was very strange. I was getting ready to go somewhere for spring break, and then we got an email, like I was packing, and we got an email all of a sudden, and my friend was like, look at your phone, we have to go home. They're sending us all home. And so we didn't really know what to do. I called my parents and they came up a week later, got all of my stuff. And then, I went back home and had to figure out how to do all of my work and classwork from home. So it was very strange and it was a big adjustment to make, definitely.
Yeah, and Devynne, same thing with you.
Yeah, so we were actually on spring break before we were told to come back. So we were on spring break and everyone had already dispersed and gone home. And then we got an email saying if you left campus, don't come back. And it was one of those things where it's like, why not? And you read further, and it's like, oh, okay, because there's a global pandemic going on, and we want everyone to be safe. So it was an interesting time.
Well, I wish you ladies both the very best. I'm glad Blaire actually helped us produce WIN TV over the last, since you've been home. And so we've been very, very grateful. We've gotten to this point because of your assistance and your co-producing. So thank you very much. We know you got great opportunities in your future, and if not, you can always come back to the Washington Informer because we need you. And the same thing with you. Devynne came through the Marion Barry Summer Youth Employment Program. She expressed an interest in journalism, and so that's why she was selected to work here at the Informer. She has 2 stories that'll be running in the coming weeks that she's written, and we certainly do wish you much success, and you know that you have a home here at the Informer. All right, ladies?
All right.
All right, thank you, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
All righty. So that's it. I'm going to stop right now. I'm running over time, and I want to make sure that we come next to the next segment of this program, which is WI Bridge. This is Denise Rollard Barnes, publisher of the Washington Informer, signing off.
Hi. All right. Well, I'm Claudia, and this week I'm joined by Yasmin Selena, the executive director and chair of the Hustlers Guild. And the Hustlers Guild is a nonprofit that uses hip hop culture to foster sustainable tech careers for at-risk high school and college students. Welcome, Yasmin. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
So, it's Black Business Month, and for the last couple of Fridays, we focused on for-profit businesses. And so you are our first nonprofit person here. So I'm very excited about that. And I'd like to know, what called you into this space? Because you could have done anything, with your time and your education. Why are you so passionate about sustainable access to technology?
Well, so working in the Obama administration, I got to see from a federal level, like how decisions are made, who's in a room when decisions are made, how initiatives are started. And I think it's really important that we focus on those who don't have the access necessarily, right? And finding ways that we can pipeline that. So being that I had a wealth of knowledge of the how-to, I just felt like it was my duty to do so, right? Like if I know all these communities that are in need, and then I know how to actually get it done, it just made sense that I would be one of those people to supply access and resources to communities without.
Oh, I love that. Okay. So you were operating in-person sessions with students that you pivoted, right, during the onset of COVID. And
Right.
So what do you think were the three factors that really contributed to that success? Because it seems like, at least from my understanding, that you all expanded like kind of explosively with
Right.
your Zoom sessions.
Yes. So the key to our sessions, we focus on production and engagement, right? How do you retain an audience, but then after retaining the audience, how do you then grow and amplify?
Mhm.
So we do what makes sense. We hire the experts to do that, to create our content. Who are the experts for Gen Z? Gen Z. I have no idea. I tell my team all the time, if it was up to me, we'll be listening to Jay-Z all day. But I know that is not going to activate students from 12 to 17 to be interested. So we hired college students who are about to graduate and high school students to create the content that they felt would keep the kids on the call, right? So we did a lot of production. Our Zoom calls were very production heavy. We had a lot of artists that the kids were interested in. We had a lot of entertainers in general just give their time. And then we also allowed the students to drive that convo with our guests every time that we had a Zoom call. So they were in control. Like students are in control of our programming from top to bottom.
Very nice. And so how were you able to really bring in some of like your celebrities or like interesting characters that Gen Z would actually care about,
That is interesting. So I work a lot with DC filmmaker and comedian Ray Grant. So we have, I met him. He was actually a mentor when I was in high school, and he gave me like a lot of opportunities when it came to like internships and just opportunities in general. So then I was like, hey, like, let's do something for the kids in DC. And I'm going to need you to work with your friends to bring them to this platform while I work with some of our partners and people that I have relationships with in the entertainment industry to supply them with an audience that they typically wouldn't talk to. And it was kind of an easy pitch to kind of go through since nobody was doing anything at the top of COVID, except for just like sitting in the house. It really wasn't that hard of a sell. Like we didn't have to fly no one out or figure out what time they were going to be in DC. It was like, hey, we just need you on this call at this time. This is a commitment. These are the students and these are the talking points. So it was an easy plug and play for us.
And so just so that everybody out there knows, like when I say that they got some really cool speakers to come in and talk to the students, we're talking about Snoop Dogg, we're talking about, I think I heard T.I. in there. And, you know, I think for the students that you serve, having a direct line to them, like just kind of further instills how important what they're doing is, and like that you're creating access for them.
Right.
And so with that, you all have a campaign called Don't Sweat the Tech. So
Yeah.
can you talk to me about like how you've been able to provide so many resources on such a large scale?
Yes. So Don't Sweat the Tech campaign is literally us telling our students not to sweat technology that they don't have while working in the pandemic. So we were able to collaborate with multiple nonprofits just to kind of see like, what do your students need? Is there a need for like laptops or just stuff in general? And from there, we were able to devise a plan and go back to some of our tech partners or just people in the industry and say, hey, we have a huge need of X, Y, and Z. Like our kids cannot log on to do their Zoom calls or to access their work for their schools. Is there any way that we can get some help like immediately? This is something that we cannot put on the back burner. So we were able to get a substantial amount of laptops donated to us. We were able to raise a substantial amount of funds as well for us to continue programming. But we also just did a very big push. We were able to give out 200 soundproof headphones for students who are affiliated with our program and or are currently enrolled in it through the women at Tiger's Eye Management who manages rapper Chica. So they were a huge play into how we're getting this technology out. So we were able to give it to kids in like Boston, Atlanta, Alabama, a few in Ohio, New Jersey, New York, Baltimore, and of course, DC. So we're trying to fill in a gap so the students are well equipped to do their work.
I love that. And so now I definitely hope that you were watching a little earlier because Denise interviewed someone from Comcast and it sounds like they would be a natural partner for you guys if they aren't already. So somebody's got to get you all together because they're really trying to like give out hardware and help give access to people that don't have it. Yeah, so we're going to make sure that we get you connected. So what does the post-COVID version of the Hustlers Guild look like?
So we just wrapped up camp this week on Wednesday, but we are trying to figure out what is actually going to work as we transition through like the next phase of life. So we did half virtual, half in person. And this was a filmmakers camp that we did, the Hustlers Guild alongside Red Grant. We did script writing, character development. The kids wrote their entire script out on Zoom for a few days. And then we did in person, which was very COVID friendly. We had a very short and small staff list who participated with the kids. But it was a very cool experience. We had like Backyard Band came out to be instructors for the day. Pinky Corkilla came out. We had McKinton come out. A lot of people like who are super active in DC that the students know. Davey Ruffy did his session with the kids as well. And then we also had former NBA player Matt Barnes fly out from Cali to spend 3 days with the kids to work with them as like a mentor. And he announced last night that he's like fully on board with the film camp to get more of his peers and colleagues to invest more into this. So right now we're just kind of figuring out what is working while we try to make sure that we follow the regulations and keep our kids safe. But with the violence in DC right now, we want to keep our kids engaged and give them something to do, and using arts as a healing method so they can put their energy in towards something that is a little bit more productive. So Don't Shoot Guns, Shoot Cameras was a huge success that we just piloted out in DC. And we're looking for the next 5 cities to go ahead and roll that out over the next year.
I love it. Oh my gosh, that is awesome. That is so great. Like, Yasmin, thank you so much for being here with us today, for your time, for the work that you're doing in the community, because you're absolutely filling a gap. It's so needed. It's so needed.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. All right. Well, that's it. I think that we're wrapping Win TV today, and we'll see you all next week.
See ya. Thanks, Claudia.
Bye.
Bye.